People surrounding a psychic fair are being murdered. You would have thought they would have seen it coming. We're talking witchcraft.
Grief.
And the dynamo that is Fleur on this episode of
Welcome to Midsomer.
Hello, and welcome to Midsomer, the podcast where we dissect all the mysteries, the murders, and the many weird things about the long-running hit TV show, Midsomer Murders. I'm your host, Eric Buscher, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Eileen Becker. Hey, Eileen.
Hey, Eric. Today we are talking about The Witches of Angel's Rise, the sixth and final episode of the 22nd series, the most recent series of Midsomer Murders. It originally aired October 8th, 2021, and was directed by Gil Wilkinson and written by Maria Ward. Let's see what the spirits say about it.
Spoiler warning, we will be discussing the events of this episode, including the identity of the murderer. So if you haven't watched yet and don't want to know who done it, pause this and go watch it. We will still be here when you get back.
See, Hattie steals the limelight again.
Not my fault. I'm a teeny tiny bit marvellous. Oh, don't sulk, Gerard. No one likes a wet wimple on a sunny day.
One night, in the midsummer village of Angel's Rise, Tilly Mulrooney is having her tarot cards read. The reading causes Tilly to flash back to the night 3 years ago, when her best friend, B. St. Stephen's, fell to her death from the ruins of an old church. Tilly runs from the reading straight to the same ruins, while somewhere else, hooded women chant around a fire. Tilly has a mask thrown over her face, and she gets stabbed. Worst tarot reading ever. The next day, DCI John Barnaby and DS Jamie Winter are called into the crime scene. Winter is still grieving the recent loss of his grandfather. Tilly's body has been positioned in the center of a circle of various pagan symbols. Coroner Fleur Perkins says the murder weapon is a crystal wand to the heart, and a tarot card of death was found on the body. Perhaps it's a satanic ritual? Tilly's dad Frank shows up, devastated by her death. He tells them that she has been found wandering the village recently and had been having visions. Or maybe a breakdown? He blames it all on the devil's work of the St. Stephen's, who run an annual psychic fair, which, what a coincidence, is happening right now. Tilly used to work for them, but was fired the week before. At the fair, we meet Nobel almost ran Peter St. Stephen's, his wife Jeannie, and their troubled son Isaac, all still feeling the loss of their daughter Bee. Attending the fair are competing mediums Hattie Bainbridge and Gerard King, empath influencers Sally Ann Barker and Rachel Finn, tarot reader Simeon Dagley, and Feng Shui specialist Felix Marshall. Also, guest lecturer Sarah Barnaby? Oh, and Peter's former science assistant and Bee's boyfriend Jonas Wilson is running around and helping with the fair. The detective's first stop is at Dagley's table to ask him about the card found on Tilly's body. He explains that the card is from a specific deck which he happens to have, but when you know it, his devil card is missing. He claims to have never read Tilly's cards and that he was home alone the night before. Next, they meet Hattie, who says Tilly was unhappy living at home with her father. She also tells Barnaby that she knows about his dog Patty behaving weirdly, something she couldn't possibly know. Until she admits that Sarah had already told her all about it. Hattie was messing with Barnaby. I like Hattie.
I like Hattie too.
Meanwhile, Hattie's assistant Ginger is shooting daggers at Gerard, who is busy talking to Jeannie about coming to his place for some tea and space. However, he cancels their appointment when he gets home and finds someone has put a dead rat on the hood of his car with a message saying, "Our time has come." Gerard tells the police it must have come from Sally and Rachel. He's been in a land squabble with them because a creek that runs on his property is causing flooding on theirs. He was going to have to reroute the creek until Tilly stepped in and helped him just 1 week previously. Wow, that previous week was super eventful. Next, Barnaby talks to the St. Stephen's. Jeannie is a woman of faith and not a fan of the fair, even though B dabbled in the occult. Even though he is a renowned scientist, Peter lets the psychics use the castle because he has an interest in the occult. It is clear that the family is at odds with each other and very angry. Plus, Isaac has this strange list of names, which includes Tilly's, which is crossed off. Only Jonas seems to have moved on from the loss of B. He stepped in since they sacked Tilly because she was impractical. Winter visits the influencer's cottage and gets a bucket full of water tossed at him accidentally. They say the murder weapon was one of their wands, but it had gone missing a few days ago. Also, they admit to having a problem with Gerard, but they had no issue with Tilly, who they felt was vulnerable to controlling men. Gerard has a way of making women fall under his spell. Speaking of controlling men, Tilly's dad tries to burn her journal, but is stopped in time by Winter. Tilly writes that she had an appointment with Simeon for a reading. Wait, he said he had never read her. Was he lying? Simeon comes clean and explains he panicked. Tilly had sworn to secrecy because her father thought she was possessed. She was hoping the reading would help reinforce the meaning of a dream she had. Afterwards, he does a reading for himself, which causes him to run off. At Gerard's show, Hattie comes backstage to annoy him. You gotta love her. During his show, Gerard connects to a spirit who seems to be Jeannie's daughter, causing her to have a panic attack. Meanwhile, her husband leaves a voicemail on Simeon's phone, telling him he needs to stop and he's coming to find them. Simeon's body is found hanging in the woods, much like the Hanging Man tarot card left at the scene. People in Midsomer, stop using tarot cards.
Agreed.
All right, little tourist information.
Okay, well, Angel's Rise, it's not exactly Badger's Drift. This is only the second appearance of Angel's Rise in the series, and our first visit there. Besides the annual psychic fair, they have a sculpture garden where someone was murdered. Go figure.
So this is the most recent episode of Midsomer. They are currently filming new episodes, but this is the most recent one to hit the air. It was the end of this 22nd series, and it was filmed under COVID protocols. Hence, there certain things like there's no Betty in this episode. It's also not the first Midsomer episode to deal with the supernatural.
No, and we'll talk about that a little bit in depth here. It's the 21st Midsomer episode that deals with the supernatural, the unexplained, past lives, mediums, or New Age themes. And
like
they've
one, that's like one per series.
It almost is. There's some that are two. There are some series that, they don't have one, but it is about one per series, yeah. I mean, they cover everything from ghosts and werewolves and lake monsters to crop circles and UFOs. This particular episode covers territory previously dealt with in Season 8's Things That Go Bump in the Night and Season 11's Talking to the Dead, which, in my opinion, both did a much better job with the subject. Tom Barnaby, who was...
Did they?
Yes. Tom Barnaby, who starred in those episodes, approached the supernatural New Age beliefs with a boatload of skepticism, while John seems to give it a little more leeway. I mean, he's actually using the cards to try to solve the murder. I mean, he's got them pinned up.
I think he's trying. I mean, I get that he's trying to use the cards not because he believes that they have meaning, but because they meant something to the victims, and he's trying to understand the motive. I feel it's not that John gives it more leeway. It's John just doesn't give a crap. It's like Tom was very much in the older, little bit slightly more patronizing. It's like this stuff. And John's like, yeah, you believe what you want. I'm smarter than you.
Yeah. Well, the previous episodes were all more focused on kind of singular parts of the supernatural or unexplained or whatever. While Angel's Rise throws in the whole mobile library of ideas, and I think it gets a little lost in them.
I think it's because that they didn't really I feel like the writers were like, well, the killer doesn't really believe in this stuff, so we don't have to actually get it accurate or right. So we're just going to throw this weird mishmash. But it's also kind of weird things like, at all the tarot readings, the cards are always perfectly face up, even though that an upside down tarot card is actually part of tarot reading. It's called a reversed card. It means the meaning of the card is reversed. The fact that all these cards are just sort of laid out like that shows kind of a weird view of tarot. It just is like, again, we're not bothering. It feels a little lazy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weird. I feel like this episode has a lot of weird, lazy writing. If you look at sort of example of Tilly, the first victim, every detail they find about Tilly is it seems very weird and contradictory. A lot of confusing red herrings, a lot of sort of dropped things. Like, for example, Simeon says that this was Tilly's first tarot reading ever. Tilly was 22 and she's been interested in the cult for years. Are you saying that she's never gone to her friend's house and done a tarot? Are we really supposed to believe that?
Yeah, I mean, especially since this is apparently not the first psychic fair that they've had. And
Yeah.
if you go to these things, you tend to go into, whether you believe them or not, I've been to New Orleans and Jackson Square. You go and you get your fortune read. It's part of the tourist thing you do.
Every year. It's there every
Yeah.
year. I get that her dad's kind of a psycho about this stuff, but
Yeah.
also there was a weird moment where Winter is looking through her room and he finds the photo of Tilly and her mom and he's like, oh, what happened to the mother? She's gone.
Yeah.
And they never actually explain what that means. And it's just like, is it
End of story?
Yeah, she's just gone. And it's like, oh, do you mean no? But he even asks, is it, do you mean dead or does she go? She's gone?
Yeah. Okay.
Buried
in the backyard.
It's a weird sort of dangling thing that it almost feels like there was going to be something else there that just got dropped.
Yeah.
Again, it was just sort of sloppy, lazy writing.
Mm-hmm.
Not a particularly, we'll sum it up at the end, but I don't feel like the writing in this was a particularly strong. And as a closer for this season, it was a little weird.
Yeah.
We had a strange kill.
Yes, we did.
Tilly is stabbed, or as Fleur says,
penetrative wound with pellucid object. Impact through the abdomen, directly into the myocardium, or in common parlance, a crystal wand to the heart.
It's a penetrative wound with a lucid object. It was hard to say. I don't know if she said lucid or lucite. But it turns out it was a crystal magic wand. That when you see Winter sort of playing with them on the desk there, they don't look like wands.
You had to go there.
I'm trying to put this as politely as possible. They looked a little more sexual in nature.
Yeah.
If that's what they kind of looked like, and she was stabbed in the heart, what a metaphor.
And these are like feminist empaths selling these somewhat phallic objects.
So phallic. It was just, you got the sense too, is like, and we're going to talk more about Fleur later, but like when Fleur removed this, she was probably giggling.
Yeah.
remove the object from the body. We also had we had a bit of checking in the Barnaby home life. This was not a busy Barnaby home life episode. Pat, as we said, Betty is away. Patty the dog is ill, and that's a running theme that he's not feeling well throughout the episode. Which, considering they've already lost one dog in this show, that's a thing that I really don't. That was an avenue I did not want them to go down. And then, of course, they had to figure out a way to get Sarah into the episode. So as a member of the Historical Society, she's there with a booth about all the stuff in Midsomer and Angel's Rise.
Mm-hmm.
And so then she's also there at a lot of the talks and whatnot. It was like a very convenient excuse to get her in. Felt classic Barnaby. How do we work in the wife?
Yeah. It felt a bit Joycey more than Sarah.
Yeah. So let's look at some of the cast highlights this episode. This is like a lot of interesting cast members in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Colin Salmon played Gerard King, and you might recognize him from everything. His very first appearance on screen was in Prime Suspect 2, and since then he's appeared in tons of stuff, including Arrow, Krypton as General Zod, Intelligence, Party Animals, 24, Law & Order UK, Doctor Who, Hex, the films Resident Evil, and Nobody. He was considered for the role of James Bond when they were casting Casino Royale before that one went to Daniel Craig. He's also an accomplished jazz trumpeter, a skill that he has used in several of his films and TV work. And in 1993, he was named one of People magazine's 50 most beautiful people. I also feel like with a guy with a resume this long, this is actually his very first Midsomer Murders appearance. And how is that possible? Like, you go onto IMDb and he's just got a boatload of credits. And you're like, how is this like his first Midsomer? Was he just that busy?
He's been doing every other show on in Britain.
Yeah. Playing Peter St. Stephen's is Clive Mantle. He's a very busy actor as well. He's got a ton of credits. Game of Thrones, Sherlock, Alien 3, Without a Clue, and most recently the show The Accidental Medium. Since 2015, he's voiced the character Gator. on the Thomas the Tank Engines and Friends videos. He is also, and this is one of my favorite fun things because you can go onto IMDb for a hilarious photo of him in this role. He is in a deleted scene from the infamous flop Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, where he played Nuclear Man 2.
He's been around a long time. He was Great John Umber, wasn't he, on Game of Thrones? Very different kind of role.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Kean Barry plays Jonas Wilson. He's appeared in a lot of things, Father Brown, The A-List, and Casualty, but probably he's most going to be known for, among at least that fan base, is he voices the character Zane the Operative in several of the best-selling Borderlands video games, which I know Eileen plays just all the time.
Yes. What's a video game? All right. Next we have Caroline Lee Johnson. She plays Jeannie St. Stevens. She co-starred with Lenny Henry in the comedy classic Chef and the police drama The Knock. Since then, she's appeared in The Saint with Val Kilmer, Death in Paradise, Holby City, Gangs of London, and Vera, most of the usual shows. She also had a starring role in The Defender, which starred and was directed by Dolph Lundgren and featured Jerry Springer playing the President of the United States. God help us. Ian Bartholomew played grumpy, grieving...
We've done worse.
That is true. Ian Bartholomew played grumpy, grieving father Frank Mulroney. He's appeared in Coronation Street for 3 years, as well as DCI Banks, New Tricks, Marcella, and Endeavor. His nickname is Barty. Tracy Ann Oberman played Sally Ann Barker. She was Val Lewis on Friday Night Dinner, Mrs. Purchase on Toast of London and the upcoming Toast of Tinseltown, and Daisy in Thomas and Friends. There's a lot of Thomas and Friends connections on Midsomer.
Mm-hmm.
She also appeared in Doctor Who, Tracy Ullman's Show, and Afterlife. On stage, she has worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company and has appeared in over 600 radio plays. Then we have Sally Ann's cohort, Rachel Finn. She is played by Sarah Paul. She appeared in Doctors, EastEnders, House of Anubis, and the Sarah Jane Chronicles.
We only have one return visitor to Midsomer this week, but it's a doozy. Janine Davitsky plays Hattie Bainbridge. She's only appeared in one other episode, but it was the very second episode of Midsomer Murders, Death of a Hollow Man. One of her first major roles where she got a lot of notice was in Mike Leigh's production of Abigail's Party that was also filmed way back in 1977. Since then, she's had an incredible career, a mile-long list of credits, including Madness of King George, Drowning by Numbers, The Great Train Robbery, Jabberwocky, About a Boy, one of the versions of Vanity Fair, One Foot in the Grave, Waiting for God, and Boy Meets World. Her list of credits is huge. Most recently, I recognized her from playing the hilariously homicidal Betty on an episode of Murder, They Hope, with Johnny Vegas and Sian Gibson. I love Janine in this episode. Her Hattie is a joy. The way she just kind of comes in and just like tweaks Barnaby, goes after Jared. Oh, just beautiful.
She's having a lot of fun. And if there's a saving grace to this episode, I think it's her.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, she would be the village star, but we have to give it this week because even though she's only in a handful of moments, the village star has to go to Holly Willoughby. Now, outside of the UK, most people are not going to know who she is. But if you're inside the UK, she is incredibly recognizable as the presenter on This Morning, where she's been appearing on People's Breakfast Telly since 2006. She's also a frequent presenter on a multitude of programs in the UK, including The Games, Dancing on Ice, The Voice UK, something called Text Santa. For Americans, you probably want to think of her as something like a mix between Joan London and Ryan Seacrest.
Yeah.
She also played herself on a cameo on the super popular Ted Lasso. There was a lot of press, little articles and sort of more of the tabloid papers in the UK about her appearance on this, where she, at least in one of them, admitted to be so nervous for her short cameo in this that she said she needed 25 takes to get her lines out.
I do remember a lot of the talk on and chatter about that role and her cameo on this. So when it was being filmed.
Oh yeah, she's a frequent guest on a lot of things. I recognize her because I'm a big fan of Would I Lie to You, where she's appeared a few times. But yeah, this was, for American audience, this would be like if Ryan Seacrest popped up playing himself on an episode of The Rookie. So, or maybe something bigger, because I don't know how many people watch The Rookie compared to how they watch Midsomer.
Yeah.
We're going to take a little detour into Eileen's History Corner, where she's going to give us a history of witchcraft.
Let's just say that John Barnaby was wrong when he said that witchcraft was tied to Christianity. It goes back much further than that and is a concept that is worldwide. The belief in sorcerers was prevalent in the Near East and ancient Egypt, and magic features in ancient Greek mythology. In the Western world, the laws against witchcraft come from the Old Testament as well as Roman law, and while white witches who healed and countered the evil of dark witches were recognized, witchcraft and wizards came more and more to be associated with evil and Satan. The more Christianity spread, the more witchcraft was associated with pagan religions, devil worship, and black magic. However, St. Augustine of Hippo, who was a huge influence on Christianity, thought that belief in witchcraft was heretical because it did not exist. While Charlemagne did not believe in witchcraft, his son, Louis the Pious, did, and under his influence, courts began to pass the death penalty for witches. In Britain, witchcraft and wizardry goes back to at least the 10th century, when Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry was founded.
I'm sorry, what?
Okay, it probably goes back further than that. The term witch comes from the Old English Wicca, which at the time was pronounced witcha, and was a masculine noun, with the feminine being witche. The earliest use of the word witchcraft, which I'm sure I just butchered, comes from the Laws of Alfred, dating to around 890 AD during the reign of Alfred the Great. As the word moved into Middle English, the words wizard and warlock came into usage for male practitioners of witchcraft. And as Britain became more Christian, the laws of the various kingdoms were influenced by the Frankish laws against witchcraft. Over time, it became an article of faith that all witches had to sign a pact with the devil, and so were inherently evil. Secret midnight meetings, orgies, baby eating, and demonic familiars became part of the lore. The pact and the ceremony with the devil became known as the witches' Sabbath. However, learned scholars of the dark arts, such as sorcerers and necromancers, while wielding diabolical magic, were considered in a different class, more elite and more male. The first big witch hunts began around 1300, and some of its victims included Pope Boniface VIII, who was tried posthumously, and the rich and powerful Knights Templars, who were charged with all sorts of crimes by King Philip IV of France, who was, coincidentally, deeply in debt to them. Accusations of witchcraft were often used against women, especially groups that were considered a threat, as well as a convenient political tool against perceived enemies, as forfeiture of property often went along with the sentence of death. In Europe, between 1500 and 1660, up to 80,000 people were executed for witchcraft. Approximately 80% of them were women. However, there continued to be men like John Dee, who practiced astrology, alchemy, divination, and occultism, and became Queen Elizabeth I's court astrologer and scientific advisor. However, things changed under King James I, who was also King James VI of Scotland and the son of Mary, Queen of Scots. James's interest in witchcraft was spurred by the trials he saw in Denmark while picking up his wife. In 1590, he attended the first major witchcraft trials in Scotland, and in 1597, he wrote a book called Demonology, which opposed the practice of witchcraft. James regarded himself as something of an expert on interrogating witches and attended many a torture session. His beliefs influenced the characters of the three witches in Shakespeare's Macbeth. The most famous witch hunter in English history was Matthew Hopkins.
Oh, I thought it was Vin Diesel.
No.
You're right, he was the last witch hunter.
He was the last witch hunter. But Matthew Hopkins dubbed himself the Witchfinder General. He was most active during the English Civil War and in the strong Puritan region of East Anglia, and was responsible for the execution of over 100 alleged witches in the 3 years he worked as witchfinder. His witch hunting methods were outlined in his book, The Discovery of Witches, which was published in 1647, and later influenced witch hunts in the New World. Attitudes began to change with the Enlightenment, though alchemy was still practiced, even by Isaac Newton, and the Witchcraft Law of 1735 provided punishments for pretending to be a witch, not for being one. Witches began to enter the realm of folklore, flying on broomsticks and wearing pointy hats. They became the villains of fairy tales. Or there have always been those who claim to practice the dark arts, the modern practice of Wicca is a modern interpretation of pagan religion and ritual practices. Magic is strongly associated these days with feminism and female empowerment, as during the witch hunting days, women were considered weak and more likely to enter a pact with the devil to gain power. So it turns that old stereotype on its head these days. And by the way, tarot is much more recent, as playing cards weren't found in Europe until the 14th century, and tarot as a divination dates from the late 18th century. It's not ancient Egyptian.
So it's interesting, as you were talking about, well, this guy killed 100 witches. Like, wow, he's a mass murderer. Because they weren't witches. It's all sort of this psychopathy, misogyny, power, control, patriarchy. It's when you think about like the history of witchcraft, it's like the gross part is sort of wasn't that people were believing in witches. It was like how the Christians, at the time, don't send us hate mail, treated them.
Yeah. And a lot of that does go back to pre-Christian times, but in Christian eras, a lot of the misogyny came more to the fore.
Yeah. It also kind of shows that what was going on at the psychic fair was pretty innocuous.
Except for the phallic wands.
I mean, it's not even really a psychic. There was some psychics there, but
yeah.
Well, I guess what am I to say? Is like it's sort of like going to Comic-Con and then like they have movie stars there. It's okay.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I guess that the fair felt a little bit like, small English village, like the little feats or whatnot. I guess it felt small.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that may have been like the COVID restrictions that they were feeling under. Also, is Feng Shui the occult?
Feng Shui is Chinese in origin and has been folded into the New Age, which is cousin to the occult, I guess. It all seems to fall into the same weird ideas blanket that people kind of put anything that's not traditional in under.
If Feng Shui is occult, then so is Marie Kondo. So is Buddhism. I mean, it's a real. That one was like a real stretch because like Feng Shui is like, I'm trying to turn the whole world into Feng Shui. It's like a lot of people are into Feng Shui, dude.
Yeah.
Feng Shui white guy.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take a quick break here. And then we're going to come back and discuss the second half of this episode. And we're back. Let's jump into the second half of The Witches of Angel's Rise.
We like your energy, don't we, Rach?
Oh, don't worry. We're not going to put a spell on you.
Fleur informs the detectives that Simeon was asphyxiated a few hours earlier and that anyone attending Gerard's show was still a suspect. So, everyone?
Everyone.
Meanwhile, Isaac is breaking into homes, including Simeon's, and filming himself snooping through their stuff. Just what is he looking for? That night, Winter stakes out the village while staring at photos of his grandfather. He witnesses Felix loading up a mysterious animal crate, and then Hattie and Ginger walking through the graveyard in cloaks. He reaches out to Barnaby, and they discover a Wiccan ceremony, including Hattie, Sally Ann, and Rachel, inducting Ginger into their group. They are interrupted by Tilly's dad, blaming the women for his daughter's death, and assaulting Winters before he is detained. The detectives take him away, as well as some handwritten notes from Ginger that were a part of the ceremony. The next day, Barnaby explains that he did some research and realizes that all the symbols at the crime scene are jumbled up and from different beliefs. Does this mean the killer is an expert, or just no idea what they're doing? Winters finds the voicemail on Simeon's phones, and they confront Peter, who says that Simeon was harassing him over an unpaid bill. Turns out he was also their accountant because tarot readers need a day job. Barnaby finds Isaac's mystery list, now with Simeon's name also crossed off, and tracks him to the location where Bee died. Bringing the family together, Isaac reveals that Simeon was blackmailing Peter, and that they fired Tilly because she wanted to talk about her dreams of Bee, and the family just does not want to deal with the loss. Jeannie blames Isaac for Bee's death in a particularly heartbreaking scene. Isaac admits he was there when she died, but didn't know what to do to save his big sister. Barnaby and Winter return to the fair and interrogate Sally, Rachel, and Felix about the mystery crate, which turns out to be beavers who will dam up the water to stop the flooding, which was Tilly's suggestion after she felt guilty for helping Gerard. Then they meet TV presenter Holly Willoughby, who gives Winter a small gift to help him deal with his grandfather's passing. She also clearly has a thing for Winter, which is weird because Holly Willoughby is married. The detectives crack Isaac's phone and finds films of everyone's cottages. They also figure out that Tilly's and Simeon's readings had something to do with Bee's accident, but they're no closer to whodunit. Barnaby talks to Jonas, who says he was supposed to meet Bee the night she died, but he was too late. Jeannie finally comes to Gerard's cottage after the fight with Isaac. Gerard tells her that she needs a past life regression, but Ginger knows what's going on. After using a knife on his car, she stops the regression, revealing that she's also fallen prey to Gerard, having given him her life savings, among other things. And she's not the only one. Gerard turns out to be a con man who had researched people in town, including Jeannie and Bee. But is he also a killer? Barnaby talks to Hattie, who reveals that Isaac has been working for her, breaking into cottages and videoing material she could then refer to in her stage show. She says her gift left her years ago, and that's why she retired. She's coming back for one more performance and swears she won't use the material Isaac gave her. If nothing happens and her gift doesn't show up, then her gift doesn't show up. Isaac's video clears him of the murder, but also reveals that Peter is not the brilliant scientist he claims to be. He stole his ideas from another scientist whom he regularly pays off. Simeon discovered this and wanted to tell everyone. Peter also says that Jonah, who said he had stopped working for the St. Stephen's after Bee's death, actually left before her death because he disapproved of her interest in the occult. This sends the detectives to the caves where Hattie is having her show. By mistake, Fleur enters the show through the back, where she is grabbed by the killer wearing a mask. And then here's the reveal. Jonas is the killer, still grieving the loss of Bee. He had been there the night she died, arriving just in time to watch her fall to her death and hold her in his arms. He killed Tilly and Simeon because they both were trying to help him deal with his grief using occult methods like readings and messages from the afterlife. Since he is a diehard atheist, rational thinker, he couldn't take it and killed them both to make them stop forcing their beliefs on him. Apparently, people in his village don't believe in firm boundaries. Jonas holds a sharp pentagram to Fleur's throat, threatening to hurt her. Winter tries to talk him down, but ultimately it takes a kick from Fleur to get free. Hattie tells Jonas that Bee forgives him, calling him by a pet name only Bee would know. Jonas collapses in her arms, finally accepting that Bee's spirit is still there. Or maybe he's just tired. He's killed 2 people and tried to kill another in like a day and a half. That takes a lot out of you. Afterwards, the team and Sarah meet up at Chateau Barnaby to discuss if the occult is real and offer a toast to Grandpa Jimmy. And thus ends the current season of Midsomer Murders. So, I guess the big, although with all the occult trappings and everything like that, the main theme of this episode is clearly grief.
Oh, yeah.
Like Jonas, his whole motive is he is kind of mired in his grief. There's that line, I thought it was kind of like a very telling line where he says like he couldn't stand for like the reason like he couldn't believe that Bee was a spirit because he just couldn't stand the idea that she would be a spirit alone without him. And I felt that really captures sort of sometimes there's a selfishness in grief, there's an anger in grief. And I felt that was really captured well, but also it's a real stupid reason to kill people.
Yeah, he could have, just blocked their number on his phone. It's very easy to do.
Or a restraining order if they're like harassing him.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing is like they just wouldn't leave me alone. And I was like, well, it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, so he's kind of snapped because of his grief and his guilt. But then it makes him just another one of these insane on the inside killers.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a bit of the evil atheist that balances out all the evil, I don't know, religious and, psychic people they've had earlier, I guess. It just didn't completely convince me as a reason.
I mean, there was something like beautiful in that kind of like in the idea of like grief as a metaphor for this episode, that it's a shame that it was like being snapped by grief that caused these murders. It could have been, it just felt the way it was done was, again, kind of going back to the writing, half-baked.
Yeah. And to be honest, did they actually solve it, or did they just come across the guy and then he took off his mask and they knew who he was?
There was that moment where Peters tells Barnaby that, like, basically reveals that Jonas had kind of lied to Barnaby. And that's when Barnaby kind of, Barnaby's very good at sort of putting it together, but they don't really do with the John Barnaby character. They don't really do what they did with the Tom Barnaby, which was Tom would do the grand reveal. John, it's, again, this is much more of the trope. It's like, someone's in danger. The killer's got somebody, John needs to come and talk them down.
Yeah.
That is the new trope. He doesn't get to reveal, like, I knew it was you. It's more of like, he talks it through with the killer. And it's, by the way, did you think that Jonas, like, it took like one word out of Hattie's mouth and then Jonas just kind of just collapses?
Yeah, speaking of talking him down, Hattie was the one who did that.
Yeah. Yeah, but not only talked him down, like, he literally was like, oh my God, she's real. And it was like,
yeah, that was very, very convenient.
I also have to say is that there was the beautifully played moment where Jeannie blames Isaac. Again, another kind of look at the grief that this family's having, of just like, and you just like, I just, it was, I think, one of the better acted scenes, one of the more like, I feel like, again, we've talked about, this is a show of, can be over the top. That was a moment of like, that happens.
Yeah.
And you just felt both the anguish of the mom and the anger and like kind of that displaced rage of grief, as also just like the pain that kid of his own guilt, and then fostered on to it by his mom. It was just, that moment really kind of, that was one of those rare Midsomer moments that it just really got me.
Yeah. Yeah, that I thought was very well written and well acted, which I can't say for the rest of the episode.
Oh, no, you can't.
But that particular scene was very well done.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of characters in this episode.
Yeah.
I count, there was 12 suspects. Like, you've got like the 3 members of the St. Stephen's family. You have Jonas. You have the 2 influencers, Gerard, Hattie, Simeon, the dad, Felix, and Ginger. But that also means is like, trying to give everybody a little bit of a story. Like, Felix ultimately gets nothing.
Yeah.
Like, he's just an extraneous character. What did it feel like to you?
It felt overstuffed and undercooked for me. There's a hodgepodge of supernatural New Age ideas, as I said before, a sort of stew, if you will. And I do think that there are too many characters. Now, I do like having a variety in the number of suspects, and I think that a lot of suspects can be carried off well. Agatha Christie has done this very well, where she has taken a large number of suspects and blended their stories together so that it works. But this felt like a lot of them got a little short shrift. Ginger kind of came out of nowhere. She kind of sits around and doesn't do a whole lot except
stare. There's a bit where she sits in the library, looks scared. I mean, they kind of like the way she was looking at Tom, like as Tom was reading the book on rat catching.
Yeah.
Which, I kind of like, I didn't look. I feel like I should look up and see, like, was that a real book on Amazon? I would love to see if Amazon or, bookshop.org, if you want to shop at your local independent bookstores, has a book on rat catching.
And she so easily gives up the information on what her patrons' reading habits are, which is like, doesn't that require or should require a subpoena?
I don't know. I don't think that's, I mean, it may not be the same thing over there. In the US, I think it's harder to get library records because of privacy laws, but privacy laws are different in the UK.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like, sure. Yeah. Here, take a look.
That felt very weird, especially, at the time of this recording in the US, there has been a lot of library challenges. There's been an increase of book bannings throughout the U.S. right now. So it felt a little weird to sort of watch a librarian just sort of like you just give up people's privacy.
Yeah.
But then again, like their names are on the cards.
Yeah.
Like their names are on the cards in there. So there's not real, there's no expectation of privacy when you can just flip open the back of a book and see who checked it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember in elementary school, those cards. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. What did you think of the very end?
Yeah. The thrilling climax where the existence of the afterlife is debated.
Is that thrilling with a question mark?
Yeah, I think it just didn't thrill me. It was a lot of...
No, wait, are you... I feel like I just want to clarify for something here. Are you talking about at the end where Jonas is holding Fleur hostage and they're having that kind of whole argument, or are you talking about the very end when everyone's sort of sitting around having a drink?
Oh no, I'm holding a person hostage with a Christmas star, and and we're debating the afterlife. Actually, I didn't kind of buy any of the weapons.
Well, they never actually, like, first of all, like we've already talked about how I feel about the magic wand death.
Yeah.
We don't actually see how Simeon was killed. They said asphyxiated, and either it was with the mask or just somebody just smothered him or choked him out.
Yeah.
The Christmas star, that did look sharp and pointy. So I guess if you're going to jab it into someone's throat, it would probably hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it seemed out of character for Fleur until she like socked him. And then it seemed like she could have done that a lot earlier.
Yeah. Let's just jump to corner here because this is our first Fleur, and Eileen and I are both huge Fleur lovers. So let's talk a moment about Annette Badland, who plays Fleur. She was born in Birmingham and trained in acting at the East 15 Acting School. She earned her equity card, which allowed her to do professional theater in 1970. Since then, she's had a tremendous career on stage and screen. She was a member of Ian McKellen's Actors Company and the Royal Shakespeare Company. She's appeared in almost every British show on the planet, including Bergerac with the original Barnaby, John Nettles. And I mean, again, everything. When I looked at the IMDb credits compared to her to Jenny Davitsky, and it's also just like hers is even longer. It's crazy. She's appeared in the films Jabberwocky, Angels and Insects, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. At the same time as appearing in Midsomer, she also played May the landlady on the hit show Ted Lasso. And every time I see her on Ted Lasso, I keep feeling like, oh, they need to give her a little bit more. They're missing out a little bit on having. I feel like they're going to have a whole episode with her in season 3 because that's how they seem to have handled these side characters.
Yeah, I'm really hoping for that too.
And I'm also hoping for a Jason Sudeikis cameo in Midsomer. Come on.
Yeah,
he's over there.
That's Ted Lasso.
I will say, but the most interesting credit that I found, she starred with Jude Law in a production of a little play called 'Tis a Pity She's a Whore, which is the play from the very first episode of Midsomer Murders. Oh. Sadly, though, she did not play Arabella. Badland gives Fleur such a wonderful bit of comic energy and fun, and every time she's on, Badland is currently the best actor on this show, because no matter what scene she is in, and no matter what even if she's like a background character, you kind of like watch what she's doing. She reminds me a little bit of sort of like someone like a Kate McKinnon over here in the US on Saturday Night Live, who, even if she's sort of in the background of a thing, you kind of gravitate her because she's always doing just a little something. And it's such a funny little thing. Like, I loved in this episode where she's going to Hattie's show and she's kind of bounding up the hill. Like, there was just this joyful energy. I was like, I'm going to go see a psychic. That I thought it was just kind of funny. Or like when she shows up in the mask.
Horny little devil I am.
Or that line she goes, like, I was the 7th child of a 7th child.
I wouldn't have thought of you as a psychic fair kind of person.
I'm not really. Although I did grow up surrounded by the light. I'm the 7th child of a 7th child. Means I should have the gift. Only I don't.
Trust me, you have a gift.
Those were my favorite little Fleur moments of this episode.
Yeah, she's always has this impish gleam in her eye, even when she's doing something serious.
I agree. I'll be honest. Like after Barnaby and Jones, Fleur is probably my favorite character on Midsomer of all time.
Yeah.
And that's original recipe Barnaby.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a bit about our Jamie Winter, since this is our first time with him?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit, because I have to say, is like I really enjoyed Winter as the sidekick. I've enjoyed Hendrix. I've enjoyed Hendrix' run more than I've enjoyed some of the other DSs. But yes, Jamie Winter is played by Nick Hendrix. He is from Berkshire, England. He studied drama at Exeter and then the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, RADA, as it's widely known. His very first TV appearance was on the show Silk, but since then he's appeared in Black Mirror, Call the Midwife, Marcella, and The Crown. Now, he has said that Midsomer Murders is a dream job for him because he enjoys all the filming in the home counties. Some fun facts. He's the nephew to the celebrated actor Alastair Stewart, who has an OBE. And he's married to the actress Jessica Ellerby, who appeared in this series of Midsomer in the episode The Scarecrow Murders. So they were keeping it in the family. I thought this episode had a lot of nice, subtle moments for him.
Oh, yeah. I love his reaction to getting hit with a cold pail of water, or a pail of cold water, I guess. Yeah. I don't know how cold the pail was.
He's really good with comedy, I think.
Yeah.
He's like Jones was. Like he is really good comic timing. He's not afraid to look silly. I think of the episode where he had to wear the superhero outfit.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Yeah.
But I mean, I also noticed there was little subtle things, and I'm not talking the way he was just staring wistfully at photos of Grandpa Jimmy.
Yeah.
Which felt over the top, not really his fault. That's what they wanted. But there was moments like the very first time we see him where he's staring at the dead body and his face there's a look on his face of like, oh, this is hard right now. And there was little moments like that. What's been your feelings on Hendrix?
Well, I think he is the master of the skinny pant. But I do enjoy him a lot. I have liked all the detective sergeants, some more than others, but they've all grown on me over time. Jones is still my favorite. I love Dan Scott as well, but Winter is definitely up there. I enjoy Hendrix's sense of timing. I think he is a very good actor in a very subtle way, in the way you were pointing out earlier. And I think he brings a lot to the show. He's been on for a while now. I think he's bringing a little bit of stability to a role because, Gwilym Lee left to go play Brian May in Bohemian Rhapsody, so he was not on for quite as long as I would have liked to have. But Winter has really come in, and I think they had a better sense of who Winter was when they started writing him than they had.
Yeah, I also think he has nothing against Gwilym Lee like that, but just Hendrix and Dudgeon have a really nice chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
They have in the same way that John Nettles and Jason Hughes had a really great rapport and chemistry. They worked really well together.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Dudgeon and Hendrix have just a really great, they have a rhythm that works in a way that Dudgeon has not had that rhythm with the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
Hughes was sort of a carryover that, and Lee, I thought Lee was fine. I just don't think they ever had the same kind of rapport that Hendrix and Dudgeon has.
Yeah.
So, so then let's go into, we have two things left to talk about. Let's real fast. Let's just recap our final thoughts on this episode.
For me, it's not a great episode. It's not the Night of the Stag bad, but
that's not a high bar.
But it's a little boring. It's with all the stuff that's going on and all the characters. Second time I watched it, I was reminded of how boring I thought it was the first time I watched it, and then the third time it was like, it got even more irritating how boring it was.
Yeah. I mean, I think you nailed it when you said it was overstuffed and undercooked. It's too full of things, but not enough. Like, this needed a few less characters so they could actually maybe spend a little more time with them. So we could spend a little more. They could do a little more with the red herrings, because it's just like they had a lot of red herrings, but they didn't go any. Like, they just literally like, oh, here's a red herring, we're not investigating it.
Now, this was Maria Ward's first screenplay. She had been a producer or a producer's assistant. She also did or co-wrote the final episode that we've seen so far on Agatha Raisin, and that is a much better episode. So whether she learned, had a lot more rapport with her co-writer, maybe it was.
I mean, I don't put it on the writer so much as like Agatha Raisin is, first of all, Agatha Raisin is it's a very separate, different entity in this show. Ultimately it comes down to the producers and the showrunners. It's not like these are little independent movies that are being made. There's a showrunners who, review all the scripts, make the tweaks, and they were the ones to say, like, we're going to go with this. I mean, it's clearly a victim of sort of the COVID, what they could and could not do with COVID. It got too bogged down into the whole psychic thing, which was just kind of silly. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I was going to end this series of episodes, I would have ended it with Happy Families, the episode where they're in the mansion on the island with a killer, which was so classic. It was
Agatha Christie.
It was very Agatha Christie, but it was also a very simple premise.
Yeah.
Good amount of cast time, good amount of suspense, classics, a very classic mystery that I felt just was like. And I think let's kind of bridge this into like the larger question or the larger conversation of, well, what is the current state of Midsomer, right? And I felt like that episode was like probably my favorite episode of the current series because it was such a simple concept, classic mystery, and it was executed well.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the strongest of seasons that they've ever done.
No.
They all felt weak. They all felt poorly written. I know that these were all filmed. I'm trying to be, I have to make sort of allowances for the fact that, again, these were filmed under COVID restrictions, so they could only do so much. I'm beginning to become concerned that they're starting to focus on the core of Midsomer Murders as a place for weird murders, as opposed to let's just have like a solid murder mystery.
Yeah. There also is a rhythm that they are getting stuck in. And it's fine, but they need to break it up occasionally, which they used to do, I think, more often, where you had the first murder, then the second murder at the halfway point, and then either the third murder or the attempted third murder towards the end.
That's like that trope of like, John Barnaby needs to save him.
Yeah.
And I don't really, I think it is what it is. I think it's not the best sort of trope to get into. It has been there since he started.
Yeah.
Since Dudgeon came on. That is the Dudgeon. That seemingly is how they want Dudgeon to do it. My guess is they probably feel it's more actiony, as opposed to like it's, it's much more now. It's not that classic British mystery ending of everyone come into the parlor, I'm going to reveal who did it. But I just feel like they're losing the mystery for the weird, like the wacky kill or the crazy killer. And it's just, the thing is I do feel that Dudgeon, Hendricks, and Fleur and Fiona Dolman are really clicking as a core group.
Yeah.
They are very fun to watch, and they are what's getting me through poorly written episodes or poorly worked through episodes, because they are like the strongest collection of people, I think, since you had the classic Barnaby Jason Hughes years.
Yeah.
I just wish that they need to get back to doing what they do, what Midsomer does best, which is weird kills, yes, but at least there's a solid mystery behind them.
Yeah. And the mystery needs to make some sense, and they need, and I do think that the Happy Families episode did provide some good variety this season, because it did. I mean, even though it was kind of a very classic episode, it was more of a throwback episode to what we're normally getting with the John Barnabys rather than the Tom Barnabys.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think that's everything we wanted to talk about. We want to thank everyone for listening to us again. If you have anything you wanted to discuss about this episode, The Witches at Angels Rise, or anything Midsomer Murders, what do you feel about the current state of Midsomer? What would you like to see? What are you happy with? What are you angry with? Let us know. Email us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com. You can also find us at we are Welcome to Midsomer on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you like this show, if you like what you're hearing, please consider subscribing to us, rating or reviewing us on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. And that really helps people find us. Tell your friends about us. Tell your friends about Midsomer. Get them watching. We are going to be back here next month, and that is an episode that episode we're going to be doing is an episode that was suggested to us by you, the listeners. So if you have a particular episode of Midsomer Murders that you want us to talk about, or you want to share your thoughts about, please, again, write us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com. And as we take the road out of Midsomer, we want to thank you for listening and remind you that in Angels Rise, doing the tarot can be murder.
And it usually is.
Welcome to Midsomer is produced by Eric Buscher and Eileen Becker. All clips in this podcast are used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act Fair Use Exemption for criticism and commentary. Our logo and podcast art was designed by Smeedrai. Our theme music is by the infamous Space.